Alrighty. Peace and blessings, soul family. Welcome back to another one. Yes, another one. I know I say it every week. I say it every week, but I mean it every single time. We got a special guest today. But before I get to introducing our special guest, I want to just kind of frame up this conversation because this episode is going to be a little bit different. We're going to talk about, of course, transformation. We're going to talk about our spiritual journey, but we're going to talk about finding joy in our journey. There's a lot of things going on in the world, whether we're talking about the wars, we're talking about mass shootings, and even when you're doing your own personal work, your spiritual practice, at times it may feel a little bit heavy. But I know it's important to be able to tap into the joy, the true essence of our being able to find joy in times where it may seem a little bit heavy. And so that's why we have a special guest today to share his journey, to talk about how he continues to have such a vibrant and lightness of being to himself. And we share and we just chop it up like we normally do. So without further ado, let me introduce my special guest today. So I've had people on the show before talking about meditation teacher training. And in meditation teacher training, it was a 16-week course. And one of the things I love and one of the gifts I have is to be able to read people's energy. And I had a chance over the course of 16 weeks. Our special guest was the instructor for many of these sessions. And I can tell you that we talked about meditation and spirituality in and out. And the one thing that I felt in his energy is that he has a lightness of being. No matter how deep the subject was, it was always bringing it back to don't get too bogged down and being heavy and, allowing all the heavy. Have a joy, have a little bit of levity, a lightness to yourself. And so I appreciated our guest, Roger Gabriel, and his approach to doing the spiritual work, but not getting bogged down and being heavy, but enjoying the journey, finding joy in the journey. So our guest today is none other than Roger Gabriel. Let me give you a bio before I'm gonna let him jump in. Roger Gabriel, he was born in Liverpool, England. I'm gonna read it off to you. Roger spent his formative years in the United Kingdom, where he first learned to meditate in the 1970s. It instantly became one of his passions, and he soon trained to be a meditation teacher under Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. After moving to the United States, Roger began studying Ayurveda, the ancient Indian system of healthcare. In 1985, he met Deepak Chopra. They became friends. And since then, Roger has assisted Deepak in numerous trainings and seminars. He taught thousands of people on multiple continents how to meditate. He's also helped train meditation teachers, including myself, in meditation, Ayurveda, and yoga. He's been blessed to study with great teachers in India and the West, and he's traveled extensively in India, and he incorporates much what he's learned in the spiritual practice and teaching. And in 2006, Roger received the spiritual name. Roger, you have to help me out with this. Raghavanand. There we go. From Sri Sutpa Baba Maharaji of Varanasi, India. So, family, I'm excited for this one. This is a real one. Welcome to the show, Roger Gabriel. I appreciate you. Welcome.
Thank you, Andre, and thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here with you today. Because when people read my bio, I always sort of feel exhausted.
Listen, you've done a lot. You've done a lot, and it shows up. It shows up in your energy. It shows up in how you affect people. So thank you for your journey, man.
You're very welcome. But like you said at the beginning, the reason why I've done it all these years is because it's been fun. My philosophy has always been, if it's not fun, why do it? And that doesn't mean to say we should be flippant, obviously. As you mentioned, there's a lot of challenges in the world these days. There always have been a lot of challenges. So we need to be responsible. But responsibility means the ability to respond to a situation. And my philosophy has been that the best way to respond to a situation is by not being serious. Seriousness is really just the ego feeling sorry for itself. That's really what it is. So we, as you said at the beginning, we need to lighten up. And if the whole world could lighten up, then who knows what would happen. So that's the basis. But yeah, we need to be responsible, and we need to take care of ourselves. We need to take care of other people as best we can. But but don't get drawn into all the drama and the melodramas, things like that. And that doesn't serve our doesn't serve ourselves, and it doesn't serve the world either.
Mhm. It's so powerful. Don't get drawn into it. Don't get drawn into it. I always feel there's a battle for your attention, right? For your attention. And we, as a function of our expanded awareness, we get to choose what we give our attention to. And I love the idea of not being flippant about things. Like, just lighten
Yeah,
up.
and what you put your attention on grows. That's why worrying is one of the most self-destructive things you can do.
Hmm.
Because I think it was who was it, Stuart Wilde, I think, who said, "Worrying is praying for what you don't want." You know,
Right.
I mean, how crazy is that? But that's what people do all the time. They're always worrying about this and worrying about that, and what you put your attention on, attention is your energy. You're directing
Hmm.
your energy on something. And it can be very powerful. And we use it, the body uses it naturally for healing. I mean, if you hit your thumb with a hammer, then all you can think about is your thumb, because the body directs all its attention there, because it's directing its energy there to heal it. But when we do it consciously, when we direct our attention onto the negative things in the world, then and the negative things in our lives through worry or things like that, then we're actually sort of creating more of what we don't want.
Mm, that part. That part. So how does it work in terms of with all the craziness that we see in the world where, I know in the Bible it talks about being in the world but not of the world, where we're aware of the things that are happening, whether it's stuff in Israel and Gaza or the mass shootings, we're aware of it, but yet we do not allow it to bog us down, but yet we still extend compassion to the people who are facing these challenges. How do we kind of navigate through that balance? What does that look like?
Well, that's really becoming the witness. So as you say, in the world but not of the world. So yes, I mean, we can't escape from the world. We're not, I mean, I guess you could run away and live in a cave or something like that. But that and for some people that's the right thing to do. To go
Mhm.
and be a monk or a nun or something like that. But for the majority of us, I mean, we are in the world. But to not be of the world means that we can be objective about it. We can be the witness. We're not consumed by it. And so that allows us to do something constructive, to make a change. That all change starts with us. And so we have to look at our own selves, our own lives. I mean, all these things going on in the world, while we're not directly responsible, I mean, we didn't start a war, we didn't go and, shoot somebody and things like that, but we are all responsible. I had this kind of awakening, I guess you could call it, a few years ago when I was driving my car. We all drive our car on the freeways and things like that, and somebody cut in front of me. And I had the normal knee-jerk reaction. Oh, you stupid idiot! But I caught myself, and let it go. It's not important. It was fine. But
Mhm.
then I thought, well, where did that energy go? That flash of anger,
Mhm.
with energy. Where did
Yeah,
that go? And
correct.
obviously, it had to go somewhere. It went off into the universe, the cosmos, or somewhere. And then I thought, well, what about all the other little bits of anger that were going on at the same time or that morning? Somebody who, was having his breakfast and he was ready for work and he spilled coffee on his tie or something like that and got
Mhm.
upset. Tripped over the kids' toys, or there are all these little things that happen to us, and we just have that little bit of anger, and they're not in themselves, they're not that important.
Mhm.
They come and go, but there's energy there. Where does that energy go? And that energy always goes off into the universe, the cosmos, somewhere, and then it all kind of comes together. So you
Mhm.
get this cloud of all these little bits of energy, and at some point, that's going to descend, and that's when we end up with a war, or,
Mhm.
a mass shooting, or something like that. So we all have to be responsible for our own lives. We have to be conscious of our actions, conscious of our choices, and the way to do that, you know, is, as I said, to be the witness, not be in the world, not be, you know, of the world. We're in the world, but not of the world. So we're not consumed by the world. We can look at it a little more objectively, and then we can hopefully start to make actions and live a life that, you know, is more serving and sensible for ourselves and for the world around us.
Mm. That's so powerful, responsible for our actions, and even going further upstream, responsible for our thoughts. Like
Oh yeah,
how, yeah.
thoughts are more powerful than actions in many ways. It's like, you know, as you go within, then it becomes more powerful. It's like, you know, the subatomic level is more powerful than the atomic level and things like
Mm,
that. So yes, the actions that we do, you know, that's it. It's gone, it's done. But when we're sort of at those deeper levels, thinking, and then, you know, deeper within, that's infinite possibilities that we're tapping into there, and that's very, very powerful. And so yeah, be careful not only what you do and what you say, but, you know, what you think. There's a wonderful quote, and I'm not sure where it came from because I've heard it and different people take credit for it in different groups. But, you know, it says, before the words pass the lips, you know, you need to ask yourself three questions. The first one, is it kind? You know,
mm,
is it kind? You know, the second one, is it truthful? Is it truthful? I mean, is this truthful? And the third one is it necessary?
mm,
Can you imagine if all these politicians and leaders of the world observed those three requirements? There would be so much silence in the world instantaneously.
mm,
You know, or not just the politicians, but everyone, if we all just practice that. So, you know, that's a rule that I try and live by. I'm not always successful, of course. You know, we get caught up into things. We all do. I'm as guilty as anyone else. I'm not perfect, but you know, is it kind? Is it true? Is it necessary? We could ask ourselves those questions. It would make a huge difference in our behavior.
mhm. Is it kind? Is it true? Is it necessary? That is an incredible rubric that we all need to apply and just live by that. Live by that. I think there would be a lot, to your point, a lot more silence,
Yeah,
a
yeah,
lot more space
yeah.
for other
That
things to appear.
that in itself would be wonderful because, you know, the power is in the silence. That's really what it is. You know,
Mm,
I read this quote the other day. It's by a mystic, great teacher called Osho,
mm-hmm,
and you know, he was a fun person to listen to. He got himself into trouble with, you know, the government and things like that, but that's a separate thing, you know. But anyway, he said the he said I talk so that I can create, and I'm misquoting him here, but roughly what he said is, he said, I talk for the benefit of the silence between the words. He said, the words are irrelevant. What's important is the silence,
mm,
because the silence is the field of infinite possibilities. The words, once you say something, it's committed, it's done.
mm,
You know, it's limited. It's limited. That's it. You know, it's got its own limitations.
mm-hmm,
But in silence, it can be anything. So we need to spend more time in the silence,
mm,
either the silence between our thoughts, which is where we go in meditation, be aware of the silence between our words, between our breaths, between our steps when you're walking. Just be aware of the silence, the spaces between things. You know, it's the spaces, that silent space between things. That's where the magic is. The magic
mm,
isn't in the what's committed. It's in there. Ramana Maharshi, another great teacher, somebody once asked him, why don't you talk more? You know, he didn't give lectures.
mm-hmm,
He would always be there and just sit, and people would come. He'd answer questions. Somebody said, you know, why don't you give lectures? Why don't you talk more? And he said, the only reason I speak at all is for the benefit of those who don't understand the message in my silence.
mm, mm,
That's it. It's in the silence. You know, you mentioned in 2006, I got my spiritual name. You got
mm-hmm,
my name right. You kind of messed up my teacher's name, but
Yeah, I
it's,
do. One of them I'm gonna get right,
yeah,
right?
one of them, right? Yeah. So his name is Sri Sattva Baba
Satwa
Maharaj.
Baba. Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, I met him in about 2002, I think, and I visited his ashram by chance. Somebody
Hmm.
I going there, and I went along. And when I met him, I knew that this was somebody who I needed to spend time with. This is somebody who was important to me. But he didn't speak a lot of English,
Hmm.
and I don't speak. My Hindi is awful. So we couldn't have deep intellectual conversations. That's how I sort of studied up until then, listening to discourses, reading
Hmm.
books, asking questions, this sort of thing. So I thought, how am I supposed to learn? What is it that I need to learn? And I realized that it was just to be in his presence. And so that's really what I did for, and he died at the end of 2012. And so from those 10 years, I met him, not totally. I mean, I would come and go, of course. I had other things I was doing.
Hmm.
But whenever I would go there, I would just, and he gave me free range. He was quite happy for me to do whatever I wanted, really.
Hmm.
But I would just sit in his room. He's a very simple, humble man, just a small room he lived in. He slept on the floor. He didn't like beds and things like that. His door was always open.
Hmm.
It didn't matter who came, whether it was some important politician or just some humble farmer, he would treat them the same with love and respect. And I used to just sit in his room and, meditate sometime, but just observe him, just watch him, just listen in silence. That
Hmm.
was it. And hopefully some of his simplicity, his humility, his love kind of rubbed off on me. That's what I was hoping. But that's it. You don't have to be, making all this noise all the time.
Hmm. The silence, that space, that space. That's what influenced this channel, the naming of the channel, the Akashic living, right? Akasha being space and that infinite possibility, that expanded way of beingness. And so when you said space, you talked about it, it landed with me, it resonated with me. I love the idea of just the silence, because in the silence, there's infinite possibility. At the same time, it's the wisdom, and I know we talked about it in class, the wisdom of uncertainty, being able to rest in that, rest in knowing that life is always working for us. Can you talk about the wisdom of uncertainty and how we can utilize the presence of being and trusting in that?
Yeah, well, the unknown can be whatever we want it to be. I
Mm.
mean, so many people, if you talk about the unknown, and they say, oh, that's frightening. The known is the frightening. Switch on the 6 o'clock news. I mean, that's the scary stuff.
That's funny. My dad used to tell me about the cemetery. I said, I don't like going through the cemetery. There's too many spirits. He said, it's not the ones that are dead that you got to worry about.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it's so it's the unknown that's the exciting part, because that can be whatever we want it to be, really.
Mm.
That's the fun part, the exciting part. I mean, if you can step into the unknown
Mm-hmm.
every minute of your life would be magical. And that's it. The uncertain certainty is boring. If you knew exactly what was going to happen every day of your life from now on, your life would kind of get a little boring and tedious. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
if you went to a movie and you knew exactly the story, the plot, somebody had told you, the whole thing, and, all of that stuff, you'd say, it's kind of boring. I wish I hadn't listened to that person, and they hadn't, you know, told me everything. And that's it. So the uncertain is the fun thing. What's the magic? And as I said, then it leaves it up to us to create what we want, instead of having to live by, somebody else's rules, or nowadays, of course, all the social media rules that come along. So, yeah, that's why
Excellent.
Deepak coined it the wisdom of uncertainty, because
I
it
love
is.
that.
It's the wise person lives in uncertainty.
Mm. Mm. wise person lives in uncertainty. It's funny, we were just doing a session this afternoon. I do a weekly prayer session, and one of the requests was for one of my good friends who is deciding to leave her position. She got a very prominent position at a well-known organization, and she's following her heart, and she's building a beautiful retreat in Costa Rica. And she asked for prayer to, help her kind of figure out exactly how she should roll out this information to, her organization. And I just said, trust in the wisdom of uncertainty. Like, like I remember being in that space, right? To be in that sport where you're just going to jump, even though you don't necessarily know how everything is going to work out, but that life is always good. And we all have plenty of evidence to say, hey, we've been in situations where we didn't know how it always worked out or how it will work out, but it always does. And a lot of that, to your point, is so based on our consciousness, based on our way of thinking.
Yeah, so we have our desires,
Mm-hmm.
and so usually what I tell people when they come up with something like this friend of yours did, I said, have your desire and put it into a simple sentence, and then have that sentence, and you can repeat it before you meditate or before you do your prayer session or before you go to bed at night, because that's when we sort of connect with that deeper level of our being. But then let it go, release it to the universe. Let the universe handle the details. You know, the universe knows so much better what's right for us than we do. And yet,
Right.
so much of the time, where, oh, it's got to be this way and got to be that way. What I found, when you let it go, then you don't know what magic might come about it. I'll tell you a story, and I might have mentioned this during, your training, but for your listeners, it might be. When I was growing up, my father was an engineer, and he traveled all over the world on engineering projects, and I thought, wow, this is a great life, my dad has. I mean, he's traveling here and there and everywhere and doing all this stuff. So I thought, okay, when I grow up, I'm going to be a civil engineer. I'm going to build roads and bridges. And so I went to college to study civil engineering. And this was in this way back in the 60s. And
Mm-hmm.
I got to college, and it was all calculations and mathematics. This was the 60s. All I wanted to do was, read poetry and listen to folk music. So I thought, oh, this is not going to work out. This is not going to be for me. And so, I was kind of disappointed, but I dropped the idea, and I went off and, did other things,
Mm-hmm.
trained to be a business manager and things like that. And I thought, okay, it's gone. But then I met Deepak, as you said. And, since I've been working with Deepak, what have I done? I've traveled all over the world,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully I've helped people build roads and bridges on their spiritual journey. So, it was by letting go. I mean, I could have forced myself to be a civil engineer,
Mm-hmm.
but I wasn't nearly as happy and satisfied as I have been with my life,
Mm.
uh, by just letting it go. So sometimes you have to let go and trust that the universe will organize things for you, because the universe always knows best. So that's very important, that we have our desires, and
Mm-hmm.
then we plant the seed of the desire. That's why I say, plant the seed, say it before your meditation, before your prayer session, before you go to bed at night, because then you're planting it in that field of infinite possibilities that we talk
Mm-hmm.
about, planting it in that silence, and then, let it grow and be open to infinite possibilities, the wisdom of uncertainty, because you just never know what the universe has waiting for you.
Mm. That's powerful. That's powerful. Excuse me. That's part of like the prayer process that we use as well. So we talk about letting it go. We start off with a sense of gratitude, right? Gratitude, expanding our heart, expanding our receptivity to life itself, and then recognizing that we are there is a presence that knows greater than what we could ever imagine, that we're one with the presence, but then coming into realization that all the qualities that are of life are our divine essence as well. And so just reaffirming or calling forth those qualities in ourselves with the intention of the transformation or the embodiment of these qualities. And then once we get into that state, it's more or less, hey, it's an accomplished fact. It's a done deal. So we just release it and let it go. And to your point, allow it to figure itself out. We're not the ones that
That's
have to
it.
kind of figure it out.
That's the line from the Bible, thy will be done. Unfortunately, most times we say, thy will be done, but can it be done this way? you know?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. One of the things I do say, as I say, communicate to me in a way that I can understand. And that's the beauty of it, because it happens. That's the beauty of it, that it happens. I'll see, for example, today I was looking to connect with someone, and literally I was reading the bio and I wasn't sure if I should connect or reach out. But then I saw in the bio that there's something that said rivers of life in their bio. And that was the one and only sermon that I ever preached in my life, was the rivers of life. And I was like, oh, and the language that I can really understand, those little synchronicities, those little kind of like breadcrumbs to kind of lead you along the right direction. I'm grateful for those. I'm grateful for those.
Yeah, and this is why listening is very important. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and again, listening is in the silence. Listening to other people, but also listening to our own inner wisdom. That's
Mm-hmm.
it. The inner guru, if you like. We talk about gurus and teachers and spiritual guides out there, but the most important one is the one we find in ourselves. It gives us our insight, our intuition. But we have to listen. We have to listen and be, for those voices and insight or that feeling, whatever it is. Ask your body. And this is very important when we have choices to make. Ask your body, is this right for me? And your body will always respond. And it's very easy because your body really only has these two signals: I'm comfortable, I'm uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
For those feelings of comfort. I always remember reading a fellow, I can't remember what his name was now, but he was the founder of the Sony Corporation in Japan. And he said when he had a big business decision to make, he would imagine that he was eating it and he would swallow it. And then he
Mm-hmm.
said he would ask his stomach, his digestive system, how it felt. And he said if his digestion felt comfortable and happy, then it was something he knew he should go forward with. But if his stomach was, felt a little gurgly, a little indigestion, then he think, well, maybe this isn't right for me. But he was listening to his body. We don't have to, follow that same practice, but again, just ask your heart for guidance. So ask your higher self for guidance. Is this right for me? And then just listen, and there'll be some sort of response there.
Mm. That's a powerful practice. I wonder where he picked that up. That is amazing. That's amazing. I never thought of that. I know when it's time to eat, I'll generally just put my hand on my stomach and if I see an option, I'll like, oh, doesn't like it feel good. But I have the ability just to listen to my body, to your point, and figure out exactly what it needs.
But no, you can do that next time. Next year, you can go to one of these buffets. All you can eat buffets. You got your plate. And you walk down. You look at the first dish, and you say, do I want you? And there'll
Mm-hmm.
be some response. No, okay. And next one,
Mm-hmm.
do I want? Oh, yes, yes. Of course, when you get to the dessert table, then you want everything. But
Say
have to be,
yes.
have to be a little discerning. The dessert table. But
That's
no,
exactly.
that's just ask your body what's right for you, and you can do it with everything in your life. We need
Mm-hmm.
to learn to listen to our own inner wisdom. I mean, so
Mm-hmm.
much of the time we're listening to other wisdom, and nowadays, of course, social media, and I know we're on social media right now, so we can't fault it all. Um, but we have to be a little careful and not just take in everything. There's a wonderful quote I love that says, it's better to walk alone than with a crowd going in the wrong direction.
Mm-hmm.
But how many people are just wandering off with the crowd like sheep, instead of finding what's right for them.
Mm-hmm. Listening to that inner wisdom, that inner wisdom, that inner guidance is there for a reason. there for a reason. So for folks who are just starting maybe in their spiritual path, developing a practice, uh, what would you say, particularly during these times? I feel like although we see all this transformation that's happening, these challenges is there for a reason, and it's maybe shaking people to look at life differently. What would you say for folks who are starting out?
Well, there's a reason for everything. You know, the the spiritual traditions say there are no accidents in the universe.
Right.
Everything happens for a reason. So it's not the situations that are, that should concern us. What should concern us is how we respond to the situation. That's really what it is. This is what we were talking about earlier. And the best way to respond or have the ability to respond to situations is by having that inner groundedness, if you like, where we're connected to, a higher self, our spiritual self, the divinity within each of us. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what we get through, meditative process by turning our attention within instead of being out in the world all the time, spending a few minutes every day, going within and connecting because we're not only connecting with that silence, that infinite possibilities, but we're
Mm-hmm.
actually connecting with our own true self. Everything out there, that we talk about, everything that follows I am a man, I'm a meditation teacher, I am English, this and this. Those are just stories. That's not really who I am. But if I want to find out who I am, instead of looking out there, I have to look within, go within, because we're not our thoughts, we're not our actions, we're not our emotions and all this thing. Who we are is the thinker of the thoughts, the witness behind that. That's what we have to discover, and that's what we find when we go within. So that's why it's so important, that people take the time to look within and not always be looking out there. And you can start off with 5 minutes a day of just sitting quietly, just observe your breathing. It brings you into the present moment. Most of the time, we're not in the moment. Most of the time, we're in the future or the past. That's where our thoughts take us. Your thoughts take you into the future or the past. So most of the time, you're not here.
Mm-hmm.
You live your whole life. You get to be an old man like me, look back over your life and go, darn it, I missed the whole thing. I wasn't there. Because most of the time, you're not there. So we have to be here, and one way is to just be with the breath. Your breath is never in the future or the past. Your breath is always in the moment. So it's a very powerful tool. The breath is one of the most underutilized tools we have. So just sit quietly, close your eyes, just observe your breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Just witness your breath flowing in and out, not controlling it in any way, just being with it. And there's a beautiful prayer that goes along with the breath. This is from an Indian yogi, Krishnamacharya, and he said, breathing in, God comes to me. Pausing the breath, God stays with me. Breathing out, I go to God. Pausing the breath, I surrender to God. That's beautiful. But just something simple like that. And then, of course, there's mantras, and your training, you were taught how to select the mantra. A mantra is a sound, a vibration, a vehicle that we can use to go on that inward direction. But just, start off simply, but do something every day. Just sit quietly. I mean, people, I can't tell you the number of people who say, oh, I don't have a free minute the whole day. I couldn't sit still for 2 minutes or things like that. It's really saddens me to hear people say that. Just take time for yourself with a big S, not the little self,
Mm-hmm.
your big self. That's what's important.
Take time for yourself. Take time for your soul.
Yeah,
Take time for your soul. It's interesting because I think at times we forget about that. We forget about our soul. We identify so quickly with the responsibilities, with the titles, with the positions, but forget the essence of who we are. After all those things pass away or transition, the essence of the core of who we are is still there, but we
yeah,
forget to foster that relationship, that knowingness of
yeah.
it.
And we are already perfect beings. We're perfectly happy, we're perfectly healthy, we're perfectly successful. All our desires are instantly fulfilled. but we've forgotten it. That's it. So the good news is that we're perfect, we're enlightened, we're divine beings. The bad news is we've forgotten it. And because we've forgotten it, we live these less than perfect lives. We get sick, we get miserable, things don't go away, whatever. So really our whole spiritual journey, whatever it is, whether it's through, meditation and Eastern practices, or whether it's through, religions, whatever it is. I mean, it's what works for you. The whole process really is a process of remembering. It's not learning it. We don't have to learn anything new. That's why it's so easy. We just have to remember who we really are. That's what it is. Remember who we really are. That's it. That's simple. But we make it complicated. To go back to what we were talking about at the beginning, we make it complicated. Keep it simple.
Right. That's right. I remember the first time I went to a meditation retreat and it was a silent retreat and you're sitting there and all of a sudden I went through these phases where I started remembering things that were important to me. It was like desires that I had when I was younger that I always wanted to do, but I kind of pushed them to the side and they started bubbling up to the surface and started remembering. It's like, oh yeah, I had always wanted to do that, but I got caught up in the busyness or the different parts of life. But the remembering aspect, the remembering of the possibility, right, of all the things that are available to you. But for me in that moment, it was the light came on, the light bulb came on. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that part. I remember I wanted to do those things. So it was powerful. Roger, do you remember the first time you meditated? I mean, you've been meditating for years. Do you remember the first time you meditated and what brought you to meditation?
I do actually. What brought me to meditation was I was living in England, as you said at the beginning, and I had a job that it was all right, but it wasn't particularly interesting to me. And I was young. I was in my early 20s, and I was doing all the wrong things that men in their early 20s do. I was drinking too much and smoking and, whatever. And, I heard about meditation. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, as you said, I was born in Liverpool, which is where the Beatles are from. And I'd heard about, the Beatles going to India with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and having to meditate. I was aware of meditation and, I sort of, you know, read a little bit about it. But anyway, my job moved me to a new town, and I didn't know anyone. And I was kind of looking through the local newspaper for something to do, and there was a advertisement for a free lecture on meditation. And I thought, well, hey, why not go along? I'll do that. So I went along, and the two fellows there talking about meditation, and it sounded good. They talked about stress release and inner happiness and all this stuff. And I thought,
Mm-hmm.
well, I can definitely use some of that. And so I signed up to learn to meditate. And that very first meditation
Talk
was,
about it.
I mean, I knew then that this was the right thing to me, for me, in the right place for me. Now, I can't say that I was completely regular with my practice over the next few months because I was still sort of living my other non-meditative life part of the
Mm-hmm.
time. But gradually, it really dawned on me the importance of that. And so 6 months later, I'd quit my job and I'd gone off to work for the Transcendental Meditation Organization in Spain. They were running big courses in Spain. I
Mm-hmm.
went. I was volunteering for them actually as a way to earn my teacher training course because I didn't have the money to pay for it. But you had a work credit program.
Mm-hmm.
You could work so much and get credit for it. So I did that, and then I went on and did my teacher training. And actually, um, December the 20th, this coming December the 20th,
Mm-hmm.
50 years since I became a teacher of meditation.
Wow. That's what,
So
that's
that's
awesome.
it. Yeah, and that was it. I mean, that's been my life pretty much ever since. Yeah, there've been times when I, had to go and get a regular job to pay the bills and things like that over the years and what have you. But that's been my focus, is teaching meditation and then doing my own practice.
50 years. That's amazing. I like how it goes back to an ad in the newspaper. First of all,
Well, it was actually, I'll tell you, it was quite funny as well, because the ad had a picture of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi in it. And
oh,
so I saw this picture and I thought, oh gosh, he's in my town. I'll go and see him. And of course I got there and there were two guys in suits and ties, but he wasn't there at all.
you got the original catfish.
Yeah.
You were probably like, what is going on? That's funny though. That is hilarious. I love it. 50 years. I mean, my goodness, the amount of people that you've taught over that time and how the
And
practices
I was
benefited you.
very fortunate because, Maharishi was the one who taught me. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
gave me my technique and, sent me on my way. So I was very, very happy with that.
It's amazing. That is amazing. I know last time last episode I talked to one of the students in the class. We are talking about higher states of consciousness. And I think even in the training, higher states of consciousness is something that, getting your arms around it is like, okay, how far you want to go? Like we want to talk about, right? And we're sitting down and we're talking about higher states of consciousness. And there was something that came up on there. Let me just pull back because I put it in my notes. It was talking about, let's see, consciousness with respect to, let me 1 second, curving back into myself, talking about the Bhagavad Gita and Krishna speaking to Arjuna. And he said, Krishna said, curving back within myself, I create again and again. And I left that conversation and I was like, okay, I create again and again. And the world that, or the reality that we live in, the world that we live in is based off our consciousness. We are creating our experiences. And then I started thinking about it within the context of higher states of consciousness and different beings, right? And so in that state, whether it's, I don't know what we call them now, aliens or extraterrestrials, or even, I don't know what we call it, but ancestors, whatever else we have access to as higher states of consciousness. Now, in that space, am I, as the source of consciousness, creating beings, or are other beings? What are your perspective? What's your perspective on all of that?
There's nothing except you.
Mm,
It's all your creation, everything, at that deepest level. You have your creation, I have my creation, and then we co-create when we come together. But it's
mm,
all yours. I mean, this is the beauty of it, really, is that we create, but then we separate ourselves from it, and that's when the challenges come. The same as we separate ourselves from each other. And
mm,
the problems of the world today are caused by separation.
mm,
If I see you as different from me, then maybe I decide I don't like you. I won't, but and then the next day we decide we really don't like each other. And the next day after that, we get in a fight. I mean, that's what's going on in the world today. All these wars and things like that. It's just two groups of people who decide they don't like each other enough to start fighting to go to war with each other.
mm,
It's really, but on that deepest level, we're all connected. We're all part of this same universal consciousness. We have our individuality, but it's like, your two hands.
mm-hmm,
My right hand is different from my left hand, okay? But they're all connected as part of my wholeness in my body. But, if you woke up tomorrow and your hands looked at each other and said, I don't like you today, started fighting each other. Sounds ridiculous, but that's on a cosmic level.
mm,
That's ridiculous as what's going on in the world today, because, your hands are in, the right hand is different from the left hand, but they're all part of that same connected consciousness, the same as we have our own individual expression. You obviously
mm-hmm,
are different than me and everybody else, but we're all connected at that deepest level. And that's really, what we have to rediscover on our spiritual journey, is that at that deepest level, we're all part of that same wholeness. There is no separation. There is no difference at that deepest level. That would bring the end to war and all of the other stuff. It's the only way. I mean, the only way we can ever hope to stop war is to raise the level of consciousness, to move to, those higher states of consciousness where we realize our oneness with everything in creation, not just the other people, but nature. So we're not abusing nature. All this climate change stuff. It's just because we see the environment as different from ourselves. The environment is your extended body. The air you breathe comes from the trees and whatever. We can't separate ourselves from everything. And until we reconnect and realize that, then the world is always going to be in a state of suffering and sorrow.
Powerful. The oneness.
Yeah.
Divine consciousness.
Oneness, Yeah. So, we can enjoy our individuality, but know that we're all connected. We're all part of that same wholeness. And that's the great spiritual awakening that we have.
So that goes back to your point earlier in terms of the energy, right? The thoughts that we may have or the things that we say, we express, and that energy is released. And it goes, I guess, into that collective consciousness and expresses itself by means of an experience. There's no separation between us and
yeah. I mean, everything that's going on in the world today is a result of the collective consciousness. The same in the country. People complain about, the president or the leader of their country or whatever it is. The leader is just a reflection of the collective consciousness of the majority of the people. And if the collective consciousness is, messed up, then the world will be messed up. The collective consciousness is at that higher level, then we'll change. And the great thing is that we don't need to have everybody meditating or practicing spirituality and all this sort of stuff. We need to have enough because, when you get enough people behaving in a certain way, you get what's known as a quantum shift. And everything all of a sudden starts acting that way. And we see it on the negative level. You see it, there's a protest march and the people are basically peaceful and marching and, whatever. And then all of a sudden you get this little group of people who start stirring things up and then it escalates and then more and more. And next thing you know, you've got this riot, because they shifted the consciousness of the whole group. But we can do the reverse. If we have enough people, expanding their consciousness and wanting, what we've been talking about today, then, we can shift it for everyone. So we don't have to convince all those terrorists and whatever that they have to stop meditating. No, I mean, it would be ridiculous to expect that to, necessarily happen. But we need to get enough other people. Then we get that shift. And all of a sudden, boom, those people just change overnight. They don't know what hit them. All of a sudden, they throw their guns away. And, oh, yes, blessings to you all. So, but we need to get enough people. Deepak Chopra says it's about 1 billion people, which sounds like a lot, but it's about 15% of the population. So it's not, it's manageable. But we have to keep working at it, and that's why, what you're doing, and other teachers and spiritual leaders and people like that is so important. So don't give up. Don't lose hope. Never lose hope. Just keep doing it. Maybe it won't happen in our lifetimes, but hopefully it'll happen sometime.
Indeed. That reminds me of that the 100th. I think it's the 100th monkey experiment.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same principle.
Yeah.
But it's probably a little bit more than 100.
The billion. A little bit more work, a little bit more critical mass needed. But it's encouraging because you look and you see there's more conversation about spirituality. There's more people that I come into contact with that are, that have a meditation practice or some type of spiritual practice. So I believe that everybody is going through some sense of awakening and or remembering, if you will. And you can see that the tides are changing. And maybe that's kind of the indication of why we see so much turmoil and a paradigm shift that things are changing.
Yeah, I mean, with all the turmoil that's going on, potentially we could destroy ourselves. That's a very realistic possibility that, the world could just implode or something, or explode or whatever. Or people could just get so fed up with it that they say enough,
Yeah.
and they change. So
Hmm.
that's what we hope will happen.
Indeed, indeed. Hoping for a more expansive, a higher way of living, Roger. That's what I'm looking for. That's it. That's exactly it. Well, listen, I'd be remiss if we didn't kind of turn it around and finalize it with some fun. Roger, I know you for meditating.
Fun? You mean we were being serious all this time? My goodness, we failed miserably.
More fun, more fun, more fun. But no, we know you for your beautiful meditations. And everyone, if you get a chance, I encourage you to go to his website, and I'll leave it in the link, rogergabriel.com. He's got some of the best guided meditations. Uh, Literally, it takes you on a whole inward journey, and they're fantastic. But I'm curious to understand or to find out what's the inspiration behind. I know when you have fun, music is a big part of my life, and I have certain artists that I love, and I always pop in their music or stream their music. Roger, for you, who would you say are your top five musical artists or groups? And given that you're from Liverpool, I might have one. I might be there, but who knows?
Well, yeah, I mean the Beatles were wonderful, and actually, through working with Deepak,
Hmm.
um, we got to be friends with George Harrison.
Look
Um,
at that.
it was a great pleasure, and so I've loved his music in particular. Over the year, of course, he's sadly no longer with us, but we did, were able to spend a little bit of time together.
Hmm.
And so his music was very special to me. I've also loved the music of Leonard Cohen. He's been one of my all-time favorites from way back,
Hmm.
when he started recording back in the 60s. And, Bob Dylan was an influence. He's gone through many changes. Uh,
Hmm.
but then for, all out rock and roll, I'd have to say it's the Rolling Stones.
Of course. I wouldn't expect anything else. That's cool.
I mean, those guys are immortal. If anyone's immortal,
It's
you know,
them.
guys are. I mean, Keith Richards has, probably done as much to kill himself as anyone had, and he's still going. So,
He has found
um,
he's found something.
there's some of them there, and I'm sure there's many more. But yeah, but yeah. So music is a way to have fun and just release and let go and do that. And those are some people who I've enjoyed, and still enjoy it listening to.
There we go.
Uh,
That's cool. It's so interesting because a lot of times when you have teachers, you get the one aspect, right, where it's about the process and the journey, but to see the other side, right? Because we're full beings, and we have things that we enjoy. So to hear that and to know that you let your hair down, so to say, and listen to some Rolling Stones or whatever else, that's cool. That's good stuff. So another one, top five. What would you say your top five uh your top five teachers? Or we know you studied with some great teachers. Who would you say? And not to rank them at all, but who's had the greatest impact on you?
well, of course, my first teachers were my parents.
Mm,
So I always hold them in great regard and respect. I had a you know wonderful childhood. I mean, we weren't particularly wealthy or anything like that, but it was just a very loving, caring, you know, household that we lived in. So they're always in my mind when I think of teachers. And then of course Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, he was my first spiritual guru.
hmm.
Um, and as we mentioned, Sri Sattva Baba Maharaji, who I spent a lot of time with and gave me my spiritual name, Raghavanand.
Mm-hmm.
And then Deepak. I mean, Deepak Chopra. I mean, he's been a good friend of mine, and and a great inspiration and teacher, and still, still inspires and teaches me. I mean, he's still out there, running all over the world, doing his best, tirelessly working out there. So he's very important. And as far as, I mean, there are many more, teachers that I studied with. Ramana Maharshi, who I never knew personally. I mean, died in 1950, I think. So I didn't know him personally, but his teaching has always, been very inspiring to me. And then Paramahansa Yogananda,
Mm-hmm.
I love a lot of his stuff. And, then there are the other mystics, and so, there's so many. It's hard to think of them all. But anyway, there are a few that I've enjoyed over the years and still enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's powerful that you started with your parents.
Mm.
It starts at home. A lot
Yeah,
of the learnings.
it does. And you see, as children, young children, we're still in that state of almost enlightenment. Not quite, but we're still there because we're still connected to that non-local state of awareness. As long as we're healthy and in a good environment. And that's why young children, everything is so magical and mystical and wondrous,
Mm-hmm.
because they're still connected to that divine state of being. And they have fun. I mean, they're not worried about what's going on in the world. They're just living from moment to moment. But then, unfortunately, of course, we're taught, oh, you have to behave this way, and you can't be a kid all your life, and so on and so on and so on. So I think what's really important, my advice also is to anyone who has young children or spends time with young children, is yes, we need to educate them. We need to make them responsible, people in society. We need to keep them safe and all those things, but keep that magic and that wonder alive. So easy to lose that. And then, then you have to spend all these years working to try and get back to where you were when you started. So
Mm-hmm. That reminds me of a quote from Frederick Douglass. He said, "It's easier to raise uh, strong children than repair broken men."
yeah.
And yeah, very, very telling. I mean, it's incredible. As you were speaking, I had an image of my son. So we went on a vacation a couple of years ago, and I like to do a father son or father daughter trip with my kids, just one on one time. But before they turn 8 years old, that's that subconscious program, if you will, right? Tapping to the subconscious mind. So I took my son down to the beach, went to Costa Rica, and hung out, and I just wanted to show him different scenes, different imagery, hear different language, and we got to the beach and it was beautiful. Behind us was the jungle, and then above was the mountains, and in front of us was the sea, and to the left or right were volcanoes. And he just stopped. And this is day one. He stopped. He said, Daddy, anything is possible. Anything is possible, Daddy. Anything is possible. And I just laughed. And I laughed because I said to myself, I said, we can go home now. Like you got it. Like you got it the first day. But it was him. I wanted him to say that. I wanted him to see that and to just kind of revel in the possibility. And at a subconscious level now, he believes that. He knows that. And so that was important for him to have that experience. So
Yeah. I never had children, but if I had, I'm sure that I would have listed them as my teachers as well.
oh man, yeah. I learned so much from these guys, my lord. So much. Just the pure the possibility, the innocence, the nowness. They're not thinking about last week or, tomorrow. They're so locked in into the moment. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. Roger, appreciate it, man. I had a dope conversation with you. I appreciate this forum, this exchange. It felt good, and I appreciate you for taking your time to open up, to share your wisdom, and insights, and have fun, and remind us to find joy in the journey. Such a powerful message right now, and so many people need to hear it. So thank you so much for your time and sharing this space with me.
You're very
before,
welcome. Thank
indeed,
you
indeed.
for
So
inviting me and
yeah, I appreciate you.
hope your audience, you know, enjoyed our conversation too as much as we did.
Absolutely. I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will. I will leave your information in the description. Uh, before we go, is there anything, any project that you're working on, anything you want people to keep an eye out for?
Nothing in particular. I'm kind of, you know, easing back a little bit. You know, I'm in my sort of uh, later period of life, so I'm trying not to get involved in too many things, so I can spend more time just, you know, taking care of myself and doing things like that. But you know, I do an Instagram
Mm-hmm.
broadcast every Tuesday through Friday. It's at 8:30 Eastern time, live.
Okay.
It's live, but it's recorded. So if people are interested, and it's just a little, you know, chat. I have a few, you know, a little bit of inspiration, a few minutes of meditation, and things like that. So if people are interested, and that's Roger Gabriel 108. People are interested in joining me there. That's, as I said, it's Tuesday through Friday, 8:30 Eastern time. But it is recorded, as I said. So, but
Excellent.
otherwise, kind of go with the flow and see what pops up. You know, there's always interesting things pop up, and we just sort of open and trust the universe to take care of things.
Mhm. It's a beautiful space to be in. A beautiful space to be in. I love it. I love it. Roger, thank you so much. Soul family, thank you so much for tuning in. I always say before time and space began, we agreed to meet here at this point. So thank you for saying yes and for your journey. I love you, and I'll catch you next time. Peace, peace.